Let's move on to the Monetary Policy Committee met last week, and it looks like the interbank market is still being fine-tuned, to use your words. Why is it taking so long to do this thing? Why don't we get to the ideal situation?
So the ideal situation is really transparency, and you need an electronic system that cannot be manipulated, right? For you to be able to monitor what is happening. And that's what the Reserve Bank governor announced, that we are actually moving to a real-time trading system, right? And that's going to be manipulated because it's real time. As the market is trading, then the exchange rates are monitored. Because what we have heard now is that the market is trading at some kind of rate and going to Reserve Bank to report another rate. But once we have an electronic platform to trade, it will increase the level of transparency. But at the moment, there's so much information asymmetry within the market, and that's really a recipe for inefficiency. It's a recipe for abuse, which is what we've actually seen. Yeah.
And any specific time as to when the Reuters system is going to start operating?
Look, I think the Central Bank is working on timelines which are before the end of this year.
Before the end of this year.
Yeah.
Let's move on, PEMSEC, to, is there a new currency coming up? What's the situation?
We already have a new currency, which is specified by the law, called the Zimbabwe dollar, with a symbol ZWL, which is Zimbabwe local currency. So we already have a currency.
Okay.
So there's no new currency coming. We brought in the new currency when we introduced the local currency. What we are now simply doing, which is what we said we're going to do, is to alleviate the problems and the challenge of notes and coins. Because the new currency, when we introduced it, it was not supported by its own notes and coins. And we adopted the bond notes and coins as a form of the physical cash to support the new currency. We are now saying the time is now right for us to bring in notes and coins which support the currency that is already there. So that's what we are now simply doing, and by bringing in the notes and coins, which is proper money now.
So the ZWL,
yes,
is going to be a note. That is not going to look like a bond note. So it's going to be a new kind of note.
Exactly.
Okay, which formalizes what has already existed. I see.
And we will then expect those who were trading cash, that business is dead.
Okay.
Right? And those who were actually working on having one price for cash, another price for swipe, another price for mobile money transfers, that will also not work because the cash will be available.
Okay.
In the banks, it should be available on our ATMs, and we want to normalize the situation again.
That's obviously you're not going to tell the viewers when this is going to happen, otherwise there will be a stampede. Or
look, I think if there is a stampede this time around, it is going to be a very good stampede.
Why?
Because now the stampede that it can happen now is one that we as government will be happy to see.
Okay.
So we'll be happy to see everyone now going under their mattresses, into their safes, and bringing our bond notes back into the banking system.
And changing the bond notes for ZWL.
For the ZWL. The bond notes will still work though.
Okay.
So I'm not saying come rush, change it. So initially, the bond notes will work alongside the new notes and coins.
Okay.
So they will have the same value, and they will be ranked pari passu or equally.
But at some point you'll cut off.
At some point we'll cut off. So if you actually continue to hold them, we will not tell you when you will cut off.
Okay.
Yeah, but at some point we will decide that we will then cut off and just remain with the new notes and coins. And so we are very happy with any stampede that might ensue.
You're ready for the stampede.
We are ready for the stampede.
That's encouraging. Let's move on, PEMSEC, now to the IMF staff monitored program. My understanding is that this team that was here in September has recommended to the new managing director that the staff monitored program should be suspended, which would be dire for this country. Is that your understanding too?
That's not my understanding. Okay. We had a team in Washington during the annual meetings, which had extensive discussions with the IMF. I think in terms of the targets, most of them, which are also public, most of them are on course. Okay. That's the reality. Mm-hmm. Most of the agreed targets with the IMF, according to the S&P, are on course. Mm-hmm. We have met those targets. Mm-hmm. But we were off, as I said, on inflation initially, right? We were also off in terms of reserve money or money supply. Mm-hmm. And the discussion that we're having with IMF were around can we get back on track? Can we recalibrate and get back on track? But our view actually is no. We want to continue with the plan as it was, actually.
So you're comfortable the plan is on course?
We are comfortable that the plan is on course. If we need to recalibrate, it might be maybe 1 or 2 targets. But everything else, we don't want to change. Okay. Yeah? We want to remain on course, and we want to continue to pursue the S&P. And the point that I'm making is, look, the S&P is not like some secret document. It's there on the IMF website. Yeah? And obviously, in due course, they can make an announcement in terms of how we've fared, how we've performed, where we have had some missteps. Right? And we do acknowledge that there were some missteps which the IMF were concerned about. But when you look at the overall program, I think
you're on course.
And say even if you are going to mark it, I think it's a pass.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
So the Treasury is the Minister of Finance in particular is saying that austerity is behind, yes, and that we are now should brace ourselves for growth. What is Treasury seeing that some of us are not seeing?
Look, we have been given the weather forecast for the 2019-2020 season, which seem to indicate that we will have normal to below normal rainfall in some certain areas. And I think we've taken measures, Zimbabwe being an agricultural economy, we have taken adequate measures to make sure that there is an availability of inputs so that people can go to the land and grow. We should be able to grow our own food. We should be able to feed ourselves, for starters. Because at the moment we have been derailed because we now have to import food, right? And that requires foreign currency that we could be using for other developmental issues within the economy. So with a good rainfall, good preparation for agriculture, we would then expect that agriculture will pick up. But we are also then saying on power generation, right, which is critical for production, we are now saying where else can we find power? We have to be realistic, yeah, to say even if we have good rains, Kariba can only go back to normal power generation, say around maybe June, July.
Because of the inflows.
Because of the inflows, yes, they take time.
Yeah.
So if that is the case, where do we get additional power? So the Minister of Energy has been working very, very hard to make sure that we have additional power, which can support mining, which can support agriculture. And once we've taken care of those two issues, we believe that would have created a stable platform for growth and productivity.
So supposing the weather forecast is wrong,
yes,
do we have a contingency plan in place?
So supposing the weather forecast is wrong, that's why I've said we are now looking for alternative supplies, alternative sources of power, which we have to import, right? And we're also then saying, how do we create what we call an adaptable strategy? So this economy, if you look at the trends, drought always affect us negatively, right? And we are also then working on irrigation infrastructure, but that's not going to help us in 2020, right?
Long term.
It's long term,
Yeah.
but we have started focusing on saying, because Zimbabwe has got over 10,000 water bodies. In fact, all the money that we borrowed, most of the money we borrowed from the World Bank, we built dams. We were very smart people. We were very smart, but we built dams and we stopped there. So we now need the smarter people to simply come in and harness that water by putting irrigation infrastructure, which you will see. So when we talk about productivity and a movement into growth, we are now saying, can we deploy resources into irrigation?
Okay.
That's the plan.
Okay, so there's some
Yes.
green shots there.
Yes.
Shots there. Let's move on to the legacy debt.
Yes.
Do we have a number that the RBZ has of the legacy debt to be assumed by Treasury or the RBZ rather? Do we have a number?
We have a number of what the market submitted,
What's the number?
which we didn't agree with. And look, everyone tried. Everyone tried their luck. I think they just thought that there's a lotto here. Let's all buy tickets. So we had a number where we look, which was in excess of 2 billion, which everyone had submitted, and saying, look, this is legacy debt, this is legacy debt. We don't believe that the number should be that much big.
Okay.
So the central bank is now going through all the submissions at the moment to make sure, to see what qualifies and what does not qualify.
So we don't have a number at the moment.
We have not finalized the exercise. It needs to be a very thorough exercise so that when we move forward, we move forward with something that has been verified.
Okay. There's a school of thought, PEMSEC, that says, when you look at what happened in Greece, a lot of companies that had legacy debt in Greece took a haircut. And some of the haircut was as high as 50, 80%, which means you have to leave money on the table. And there's a school of thought that says, IATA, for instance, Total and other companies that are owed legacy loans in this country, debt in this country, should take a haircut. And that haircut ought to be deep, like happened in Greece. What's your view on that?
Look, my view, look, I come from the market. Right? That's number one. Number two, of my 30 years in banking, I did spend half of that in Treasury. And we used to provide hedging instrument to market players. I don't believe that it is the role of government to hedge private sector players. When you come into the market, you have to understand the environment of that market, and you have to be able to provide your own hedging instruments. And if the market moves against you, you have taken risk, and the risk should be shared. So I think, personally, right, I actually believe that there should be room for negotiation, for discussion, in terms of, depending on how did the legacy debt arise.
Okay.
Yeah?
So that's a diplomatic answer of, yes, there should be a haircut.
Look, let me be direct.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone should get a haircut, but I think there are certain elements of the legacy debt that should have a haircut.
That's clear that.
Yeah.
Let's move on over to the issue of sanctions. And I'm wanting to find out from you, how have sanctions affected the Treasury Department? How have sanctions affected the financial service sector, for instance, bank and so forth? What's your...
So I come from the banking sector. And administratively, just trying to manage even the number of people, whoever is there on that list, the systems, the number of people that you need to be able to manage it is significant and costs lots of money and is an administrative burden on banks. But you see, the moment you put the word sanction in a country, bankers naturally are very risk averse. And Zimbabwe has lost over 80%, or if not 90% actually, of its corresponding banking relationships. And we have got lots of banks today, right, who are not able to transact in a variety of currencies.
Explain that in a layman's language. What does a correspondence bank mean? What impact does it have on me?
Yes.
When you say 80% of these,
Yes.
Let's help the people understand what that means.
So when you have your FCA account and you want to pay US dollars, the only way we can pay US dollars is by conducting a bank in the US to pay that on behalf of the bank, on your behalf. So a bank in Zimbabwe cannot send US dollar directly to the US without the intervention of a bank in the US. You can't send money to South Africa or rands without the support and assistance of a bank in South Africa. The same applies to Botswana Pula. You need a bank in Botswana.
So essentially what you're saying is we've lost 80%
of that
capacity.
We've lost 80% of that capacity.
Okay.
So receiving money now becomes difficult. Receiving money, sending money becomes difficult.
Because of sanctions.
Because of sanctions. Because you see, ordinarily, when given the technology now, you should be able to complete a transaction within hours. In Zimbabwe, you need several days. But that delays trade. So if your competitor, if a company here in Zimbabwe, and your competitor pays a supplier in Singapore, and they get their money today, you are paying the same supplier in Singapore, and it's taking you 10 days. Already.
It's obvious
It's obvious what. So it's corresponding banking relationships. But again, the kind of reforms that Zimbabwe is undertaking, these are very bold reforms. And for even anyone to believe that, look, let's go on our own without financial support from anyone, that actually requires boldness. And true reform is for you to make that call. You need people who are dedicated to reforms, who are dedicated to making this country right, to be able to say, okay, there's no one supporting us, but still we will do it. We will look at the fuel price. It's not the right price. We know it will hurt our people. We know it will be tougher on our people, but it is the right thing to do.
Energy.
Right? You look at energy. We know it will hurt our people because incomes have not moved in line with the changes, but it is the right thing to do. If we are going to create the right platform, the right environment for this economy to grow, for this economy to be right, and for our people to have prosperity in future, we have to take this bitter medicine.
Absolutely. What about the effect of sanctions on Treasury, your department, the Minister of Finance? What has it been like?
Look, I think it's exactly the same that, look, we struggled to make payments. Sometimes you send money, it's captured. Sometimes you send money, it's then sent back to you. If it's sent back to you, at least you are happy. But you see, we are a very small economy with very limited resources. We cannot afford to send money, then it's captured, then you go to a process.
Pay ESCOM and then it doesn't arrive.
It doesn't arrive. We can't afford that. So the impact becomes very, very severe. And the impact then translates to each and every person in Zimbabwe. If we want to pay for pharmaceutical or medical equipment that can only be found in some of those countries, and we can't make the payment, it affects the men in the street.
So what you're saying is that sanctions are affecting all of us?
No, they will affect all of us.
Okay.
Not
just the targeted people.
No.
Okay. Let's move on, PEMSEC, to the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism finance measures. It looks like we've failed the test, and that with effect from October, it's even going to be tougher transacting internationally. Am I right?
No.
Okay.
So there are different groupings which monitor anti-money laundering within the world. But the biggest one being what is called the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF. And when they perceive the level of risk, right, within an economy to be high, then they increase their monitoring, right? Or when they actually come to you and say, can you address the following issues? So there were issues that we're addressing, and the majority of them, I'll be happy to say, have been addressed.
That's interesting.
The majority of them have been addressed. So I think there were three elements that were still outstanding or which the way we had addressed them did not satisfy those who are monitoring. But according to our assessment, we have addressed the bigger part, and we actually also don't believe that we will get into a category where we will not transact.
Okay.
It's just closer monitoring, and I believe that by February, March next year, which are the agreed dates that we have, we should be able to clear a remediation of those issues. The remediation was already in progress, but they were saying, look, we think you can do more on prosecution of those whom you will be found to have
seizure of assets.
Seizure of assets. Yes. So those were just the issues to say we are happy with what you're doing, but on these three areas you can do better or you can do more.
Pamsek, let's move to an issue where you have taken. You were the president of the Bankers Association of Zimbabwe when the government brought up the 99-year leases. You are now the permanent secretary. You are on both sides of the argument, and the view is, how do we make the 99-year leases bankable? How do we make the banks comfortable that it's bankable? How do we make the farmers comfortable that it's bankable? How do we deal with government's concerns around the issue of land reform and 99-year leases?
Yeah, look, I think you highlight a very interesting part of my previous history. That I was indeed the president of the Bankers Association of Zimbabwe when we finally accepted the 99-year lease as security. But I also have a confession to make. Yeah, and I don't know whether you're a priest or not, but I have a confession to make. So
bring the confession.
So after a lot of pressure from the then Minister of Finance and Minister of Agriculture on the 99-year lease, where we're saying it's not bankable, it's not bankable, it's not bankable. But after a lot of political pressure from the then ministers, we also decided to become political as bankers. But we see what we said, you know what, guys, how do we lend money? Right? We lend money eventually through our credit committees and our board. And the government does not sit on our credit committee. It does not sit on our board. Why are we having to be going every day for a meeting on this 99-year lease? Let's accept.
But not implement.
Yes, but when it comes, we just say they don't qualify. And I'll tell you that is what exactly has been happening. Yeah?
Okay.
But what do banks want? Banks, for security, to be firm, to be strong security, it has to be realizable. Yeah? And the current nature of the 99-year lease, where as government we say you can only securitize improvements and not the land. How do you separate this building from this land? And saying, okay, I'm coming to you, Trevor, I'll give you a loan, but I'm taking the loan on the improvements around this land. The land is not part of it. When the building is on the land, when the improvements are on the land. Because the moment you take the improvements off the farm, they have no value. So we have to address the issue of making sure that security is realizable.
Are we getting there?
And I also now, because I sit on the other side, I understand the government concerns. And I think we do have a mechanism which will be comfortable to government and comfortable to the banks. Because you see, what we have simply done, because with land reform, we do have lots of good farmers who are on the land, yeah? But we also have lots of very good landlords who are on the land. There's a difference between a farmer and a landlord. So we created farmers, right? But we also created landlords. So the farmers are the ones who are farming today, who are coming, whom we are supporting through command agriculture. The landlords are the ones who are sitting wherever they are sitting, and they have got a certificate which shows that they've got land in Karoi, they've got land in Odzi. Yeah? And they say, look, but in farm kaini. But they are not
Farming.
They are not farming. So either we will need to enhance and give more support to the farmers, get the landlords to be farmers, and I will be very controversial here, or kick them out. Yeah?
Okay.
Kick them out. Yeah? So if you are not a farmer, you should not be on the farm. We don't want landlords on farms. We don't want landlords on farms. We want farmers on farms.
Okay. So essentially, you are working on turning the 99-year leases into bankable instruments. Yes.
It's important
Okay.
to make them bankable.
Any timelines on that, PAMSEC?
Look, we are still hoping that we start the 2020, right, on a much cleaner, better slate. These are some of the big issues that have always been on the table, but have been ignored. But we are tackling them as government and say, how do we address these bigger issues, these bigger ticket issues? Because that's what talks into growth, that's what talks into production.
Okay, let's move on to perhaps one of the most controversial initiatives that you came up with as a Treasury Department, the 2% tax. Some people want it gone. Where do you stand with that? Are you being persuaded by the noises that it must go, that it is causing price escalations and instability, and it must be done away with?
Look, we have done an impact assessment to say what is the price impact of the 2% on a variety of commodity on the prices. I think the average is 4.2%. Yeah, right? At most, that's an average. And we actually believe that from a price increase perspective, that narrative that the 2% causes prices to go up is incorrect.
Okay.
We've done an analysis. We've done a further analysis, and we've realized that this is a very highly informalized economy. Yeah? So that most of the business running around, they don't even have bank accounts. But we also realize that within the 2%, our capacity to capture the bigger part of the population into the tax net is enhanced. Obviously, there are some who come and then complain and say, look, but you were already capturing us, like the bigger businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah? I think that can be an argument that we can look at.
So you're looking at certain exceptions.
We have already provided lots of exceptions anyway, right? But the bigger question is, what have we done with the 2%?
How much have you raised, and what have you done with it?
I think that's the bigger question to say. Sure. What have we done with the 2%? When we started, we said we would ring fence the 2% so that it supports infrastructure development and it supports the social nets. So we were able to react very quickly to Cyclone Idai because we're at the 2%.
Okay.
We are able now to provide grain even to people in urban areas because of the 2%. We were already using it to support the people in vulnerable members in the rural areas, but we are using it to support vulnerable members in the urban areas. We have been able to support building of dams, lots of dams, construction going on, building of roads. We have just started signed contracts for 5 contractors to be on the ground. They are already on the ground for the Harare Bedbridge Road. It's all funded by
the 2%.
By the 2%. Yeah? We have been able to support bringing in of medical equipment, bringing in of medicines. We are working on ambulances now, which will go across all provinces using the 2%. So we actually believe that because we have ring-fenced the resources and we are using them for critical aspects of our economy, which support the majority of the Zimbabweans, that for now, it should stay.
Okay. So you're going to make sure that it stays. You're determined that it stays.
For now, it should stay.
It should stay.
As we obviously grow the economy, improve the economy, create other sources, then we will review. We might review the percentage, we might review who pays, but for now, it will stay. We might refine it here and there, but there should be an expectation that in the next budget that we will remove the 2%.
Okay. For a man as busy as you, do you get time to read?
In fact, I read quite a lot.
You read a lot. What are you reading now?
You see, I'm reading a book. When I got my appointment, I was actually traveling. I'd gone to watch Arsenal.
We'll talk about it.
And I had to come back. So on my way back, I bought a book called The First 90 Days. So I read 3/4 of it in the plane, which was good, right? And it's a book written by a guy called Michael D. Watkins. Yeah. So, but then when I came home, I just put it in my bookshelf and I never touched it. Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, I just decided to say, let me finish the remainder. But I actually realized that I needed to start again. So I went back.
Must be good.
Yeah, to where to the first page, and I think I'm halfway through now. Although I'd done 3/4 on my journey back from London. It's a very interesting book.
What are the biggest takeaways from the book?
No, it's just be around how do you put into place a course of action when you've got a new assignment.
All right.
Yeah.
So it was fitting for
yeah. So
what
what do you look at? Whom do you look at? You look at people, you look at the processes, you look at the systems, and that you have to make your decisions very fast on all of those elements before you become entrenched. So if you believe you have to change the systems, you change them there and there. If you have to change people, you have to change them.
So you talk about going to watch Arsenal. Is watching Arsenal a stress reliever, or it increases your stress?
So these days, look, I'll be honest, I'm no longer fascinated by watching each and every Arsenal game. Some of the games I now choose to watch after they've been played.
You are a disappointed Arsenal supporter.
I'm a very disappointed Arsenal supporter, and I'm just asking, where is Arsene Wenger?
Bring back Arsene Wenger. Permanent Secretary, thank you so much for coming to In Conversation with Trevor.
My pleasure.
Much appreciated. You are a busy man. We don't take this for granted. For you out in the diaspora, across the country, on the continent, watching In Conversation with Trevor, thank you so much for watching. But to make sure that you don't miss future episodes, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go on to Facebook. So that you do get notifications every time we have a new program. In Conversation with Trevor is a weekly program, so please don't miss out. Thank you for watching, and bye.